Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the next webinar of Pai Mumbai. Today is a real power packed session. We have the great Mr. Mohandas Pai who will be talking to us, and in conversation with him is none other than our very own Harish Pai, or Harish Mehta as we know him. He has been the founder and chairman of Onward Technologies. He's also been the founding member of Pai Mumbai, and he's been the first president of Pai Mumbai. He is also the founding member of NASSCOM. We fondly like to call him as the co-founder of NASSCOM. He was the first chairman of NASSCOM as well. He's a director at Indian Angel Network. He is a senior advisor to SIDBI's Fund of Funds. And if anybody who has to know Harish Pai fondly, it will be because of his great nature and his helping nature. Also today with us is our own president, Atul Nishar, who's also going to be joining us. And Harish Bhai, over to you.
Oh, okay. I see some videos and whatnot on right now. That's okay, right?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, friends. Yesterday only I watched Dr. Zarir Udwadia's presentation. Latest update on where COVID-19 is and what the implications are. From the medical science perspective, how it will play out in the next 18 months. And he gave a number of scenarios, from the worst scenario to an optimistic scenario. But he was not at all putting his finger on a particular scenario, saying there is still so much uncertainty that I can't predict which way it will shape up. What it means is that we need to prepare for the range of scenarios that may unfold as we go. These are the medical scenarios. The question then is, what does it mean for economic scenarios? How would they unfold when this medical scenario in the background continues? So we have our own Mr. Mohandas Pai to share his views about how this economic scenarios will unfold for startup world, for the Indian economy, and then later on for the world economy. And the way that session is structured is Mr. Mohandas Pai will give his opening remarks, then followed up by questions. And we'll try to group these questions in these three categories: the startups, the Indian economy, and the world economy. I already have received something like 40 to 50 questions. So there is enough, Mohan, for us to not only 1 hour, we need 1 more hour later on. It's an outstanding response that we have got from the public. More than 750 registrations have come in. So that talks about your popularity with the startup world. To introduce Mohandas, I mean, he's a visionary, he's a rare visionary who combines both the big picture and the smallest details. We know him as a walking computer with the data on his fingertips. And we know him as when he was a CFO of Infosys, and the way he would rattle out numbers, we are just listening to him in terms of one by one the series that the data that it comes out from him. Over the last 10 years, as you all know, he has been a startup evangelist and an angel investor. He runs funds worth $500 million. He personally has invested in more than 150 companies. And he also has brought a number of startups to a very sturdy or healthy position. He also is a study in contrast, frankly, in the areas of excellence. He has controversial views on a number of things, but you may love him, you may hate him, but you cannot ignore him. He's very humble equally, and he says, people can fight with me anywhere. I have got the data, and I'm happy to be proved wrong on the basis of facts. So here is our Mohandas Pai. Mohan, over to you.
Thank you, Harish. Folks, good to be with all of you. If we are together talking to each other in the beginning of March, would you ever imagine we'll all be locked in for so long and very unsure when we'll be let out of the house? And could you imagine the whole country of India will be locked in? And can you imagine most parts of the world can be locked in for so long? So I think this is an extraordinary circumstance. It has a much bigger global impact than the global financial crisis, which essentially was impacting the United States, partially Europe, and partially Asia. Now we are seeing this impact all around the world. Now, let us look at how this has impacted the world. First, most importantly, most countries are impacted. The virus has not left any country. right from China, Japan, Southeast Asia, India, Africa, Europe, the United States, South America, etc. All countries are impacted, and all countries don't know what to do to end this and tell people they're safe to go. People are looking for herd immunity. People are talking about many things, and people don't have an end date. That means the virus could go on till you find a cure till at least December, and people are talking about multiple scenarios where there could be a relapse of this entire crisis once again. So this is a really global event, and the inflection point, in my opinion, for the globe, for all countries in the world, as regards the economy, as regards people's behavior, as regards globalization, and as regards our interaction. That's the first point. Second, it will impact the global supply chain. When this happened, China was locked up, the world realized how much they're dependent on China. 24% of global manufacturing is in China. China, the world's largest manufacturer, the world's largest exporter, largest importer, largest quantum of foreign exchange reserves. And when China was locked in, supply chains were broken, most manufacturing in other countries are out. And America discovered that a great majority of medicine has raw materials coming from China. So there's dependence on China, but the whole world, the United States, the largest economy, Europe, Japan, etc., is hurting. And now there'll be a reordering of the global supply chain, which started after the trade war by President Trump against China, when he levied those big levies. At that time, people realized that politics could take over the supply chain. They started shifting. And now I think most countries are asking their companies to look at diversifying supply chains. Many countries are making sure that their necessities are made in their own country. And I think it's a very important psychological point that has been reached. Japan is spending $2 billion to make sure its companies leave China and go somewhere else. It's not that China will disappear. China's production will come down. But it is true that supply chain will diversify. We already seen Vietnam benefiting. India may benefit. People are talking about India. So I think this is a very, very big thing. And it has repercussions for all companies in India and globally. The third thing is the oil industry. It's ridiculous to see oil quoting at a discount. Of course, it's because of derivatives. Oil still quoted at $21 at that point of time. Let me give some data. The world consumes 100 million barrels of oil a day. The United States, the largest driller of oil, at 13.5, 14 million barrels a day because of the shale gas and shale oil that they discovered. Now, when demand came down, because China in February, March, cut its supplies and cut its demand, the world was surplus in oil. People say today, the world is surplus $30 billion, 30 million barrels of oil a day. And when the price of oil started coming down, Saudi Arabia told Russia that we must cut production. Russia did not play ball because Russia was concerned about shale gas. Because every time the OPEC and Russia cut production, America benefited because they kept the price and the Americans kept pumping out the crude. Now, Saudi Arabia said, we are going to pump more and increase production from 10 million barrels to 12 million barrels, and the oil price fell. Oil price have fallen from 65, 70 to around $21 for Brent, and for WTI, Western Texas crude, it is around $14, $15. And we are seeing that in the United States, the storage is coming to 75, 80%. In the next 15 days, there'll be no space to store. And you would have seen maps of oil, of big ships all around the world storing oil. So the world is reaching a very strange situation where there is no storage space for the oil that has to be pumped. So they have to cut the oil supply. So oil for the rest of the year could be at low prices. It has benefits for India. It has disbenefits for India because the Middle East is a large remitter of savings for our people here. We have a large number of labor there. And also, we are seeing that the impact of that will have geopolitical implications because there are many countries which are oil exporters, which don't have the capacity to sustain. It is said that Saudi Arabia requires $80 a barrel to balance its budget. That means an industry which was at $3 to $4 trillion has now come to $1 trillion. And this has a repercussion on global demand. The next issue is about financial markets. Now, when you talk about financial markets, it means the bond markets in the US, in Europe, etc. Now, we had a situation before this COVID-19 where out of $36 trillion of government bonds, $18 trillion were negative. That's because of QE, quantitative easing, where the Fed in the United States, pumped out dollars, but the government securities increased its balance sheet to $5 trillion. Now the Fed is again doing the same thing, reduce interest rate to 0.25%. It's possibly the lowest that America has ever done. And in Europe too, they reduced their interest rates to very low figures. In the UK, 0.25 is almost negative. Japan has been negative. And between Japan, Europe, and the United States, about $5 trillion of economic stimulus has been created. That means these governments will have to borrow $5 trillion. Japan announced today that it will buy unlimited amount of government bonds. What does it mean for everybody? It means the world will be awash with liquidity. Globally, interest rates will come down. Hot money can flow once the economies open up. And we are going to see that the world economy this year may not grow. IMF says that global GDP of $82 trillion may be negative this year. Some people are saying that $82 trillion will become negative by 3%, etc. And it means that this liquidity sloshing around will mean that there will be hot money coming in, global capital flows will be there because people cannot get returns in their own country. And once we open up, that money could flow to India. So this has its own repercussions. The next point is several industries are going to be challenged for the rest of the year. For example, international travel, we don't know when it is going to be open. So what happens to the airlines? Most of them are asking for bailouts. What happens to travel and tourism globally? Tourism is the first or second largest employer of people, and that is shut down. We don't know how people will travel, what people will do. Restaurants and services in the United States are shut down. Most restaurants all around the world is shutting down, are following social distancing, business has come down. So all the employees there are in deep trouble. So will they come back to normal? We don't know because we have to wait and see. There is no cure for this. And those sectors, service sector has been deeply impacted. Even during the global financial crisis, they were not as impacted as they are now. So various industries like hospitality, travel, like restaurants, food, etc., are deeply impacted. The next big point that we have to keep in mind is globalization. What will happen to globalization? We had a situation before COVID, let's say in January, where you could travel around the world. Many countries had visa on arrival. There were flights, numerous flights all around the world. If you look at the map of the world, you could see it busy with so many aircraft going. All that is shut down because government said that we don't want people to come. President Trump has suspended green cards for 2 months. Now, many countries are taking back the manufacturing from other parts of the world. They're trying to create jobs for their own countries. Deglobalization will happen to some extent. There could be hostility against people from other countries and immigrants, and international travel may not open up. So international travel for the next 1 year will have an impact, and there could be deglobalization, and deglobalization has its own impact. But the challenge will be that China, if there is deglobalization, which is huge production capacity, may start dumping. It's good that India, in my opinion, did not sign on the RCEP, because the RCEP meant that we'll sign on with China. I think Minister Piyush Goyal and Prime Minister Modi stood up for India because we have free trade with ASEAN, we have free trade with Japan, but getting China the big beast means they could have been dumping all their goods. And many countries have put up their walls against FDI coming to buy up their own companies. India has done so recently. And the important thing is they're doing it to protect the companies because the price have come down. And China is standing tall. So the stock market in Shanghai is not gone down so much as in other countries. And we never know whether the government of China will finance its companies to go out and buy. But there is going to be deglobalization. And the impact of that in global politics, in global re-engineering of financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank and the United Nations will have deep repercussion. WHO is in trouble with the US because the US is accusing it of playing ball, footsie with China. So I think but these are important things that will happen all around the world. So the world is not going to be the same. It's an inflection point. Now, what about India? Now, impact on India will be very severe. Our GDP is 205 lakh crores, and that is very, very large. We were at $3 trillion on the way to become $5 trillion. Now, if you look at the composition of the Indian GDP, agriculture makes up about 15% of value added. Agriculture may grow at 3.5–4%. We won't have a bumper crop this year. The monsoon is expected to be normal, and that could mean it could grow at 3.5–4%, and that could add something like maybe something like 0.75% to 0.6% to GDP. Manufacturing is about 25% of GDP, and manufacturing will be zero. Auto industry believes that there'll be a boom because everybody will want to buy a car. But we don't know what is going to happen. So I think it's important to understand that the rest of manufacturing will maybe hurt. Construction will be definitely hurt because 2 months have gone by. And we're going to see many real estate companies also getting hurt because real estate has to start. A real estate doyen from Mumbai said that they have to cut prices by 15 to 25% to sell. And I think it's important to understand these segments. And then you look at services. Services are 60% of GDP. And in services, travel, tourism, and restaurants and trade are impacted. And then if you look at personal services, they are impacted. Only the government services, which is about 10-11% of services, which are growing 11-12%, is not impacted, though government has no shut-off increase in DA, which is very, very good. And that basically means the services may grow, services 60% may grow at maybe 2 to 3%, and that could mean overall that the GDP could be maybe 2 to 2.5%. That's the best case scenario. But more and more people are saying that GDP could be negative this year. And if GDP is negative, because there's no consumer demand or lesser demand, people are very cautious. 2 months of lockup have hurt industry. Industry will have to borrow. People are taking pay cuts, and the mood is not very positive. So I think it's very important that we watch the economic scenario and what happens to $5 trillion. Maybe it gets postponed for 2026. But I do believe that if you take the right decisions today and invest for the future, and the government has a large economic stimulus, then I think the next year, 21-22, could be a year where you could grow 7.5%. IMF says that India will grow 7.5%, 7.4% next year. So I think this is a big issue for us. Next, there is going to be huge unemployment. And we are seeing unemployment go up in a big way. You know, the EPF, Employees Provident Fund, and ESI has 8 crore members. Out of 8 crore members, maybe 4.5 crore are contract labor. And many of the contract labor in services, in big industries, in manufacturing, in construction, etc., have been shed. They're probably without jobs. They may have got their payroll for March. We don't know whether they get their payroll for April. Small-scale industries, MSMEs are challenged. I read a report which said that 25% of MSMEs have money only for 1 month, and another 25% have money for 3 months. And if you have some money today, you will preserve it for reopening and growing rather than paying wages, which many people think is a dead loss. So I think this is going to be a big, big economic crisis. But migrants all over India, especially Delhi, are trying to go back to the villages because they feel that they may go to the villages, get food, they'll be safe there, they'll be with their family. They don't want to stay in a place like Delhi where they may get 10,000-15,000 rupees, stay on the streets, and they feel the quality of life is not very good. Now, here's the big issue. We could have reverse migration from all the big cities back to the villages and smaller towns. And when this settles down, which may settle down maybe 3 months, 6 months, people may not want to come back. And if people don't want to come back, many people who depend on migrants for labor will be deeply hurt. And we have to make do with lesser labor. Labor costs in the big cities will go up, which is a positive in a sort of a way, because you can't keep body and soul together at 15,000 rupees in a city like Mumbai, Bangalore, or Delhi. It also means that many people who come from UP and Bihar because of poverty are rethinking, why should I go to Delhi, Mumbai, get 10,000-15,000 rupees, stay on the footpath, work 24 hours, long periods of time, and not have enough savings? Why can't I stay in my village and get 4,000-5,000? So there is going to be a big issue about labor from all over. The next issue, which I want to pose to you, is that we could have negative inflation. Why negative inflation? Well, if you look at the CPI, 46% of CPI is food. Now we have cereals, rice and wheat in stock, enough for 1 year. We have a bumper crop. Fruits and vegetables are a part, but interest rates in India are going up because of onion prices. India is the only country in the world where onion prices drive interest rates because of inflation. They have a high weightage. But the food indices may not go up too much this year. Manufacturing will be negative in terms of prices. Global commodities have come down. Steel prices, cement prices, copper prices, aluminum prices may not go up. So that could be a negative. It could mean possibly that most manufactured products may come down in price. You will not be able to sell at the same price. and we could have negative inflation. And if we have negative inflation for 1 year, because there is no economic growth, there is subdued demand, and maybe there is economic stimulus with a lot of money, we could see interest rates come down. One eminent economist says that government bonds may come down to 5%, and interest rates for the banks may come down. So we could see lower interest rates, which could set the stage for a bump up in investment and infrastructure for 21, 22. So we got to watch out to see whether we're going to have negative inflation. And then there'll be a change in habits. I think this is going to be another thing. The generation that is 25 to 30 today are already the tech generation. The generation that's 10 to 15 is the Instagram generation, not the Facebook generation. They know technology, they're born to technology. But the generation about 30 use technology, but are not such deep digital natives. Now, people about 60, people about 50 use technology a little bit. I was speaking to Harish Pai, and they're telling me that all his compatriots who are slightly older than 50 are saying that they're now using technology, they're staying at home. But this will have a permanent change in behavior. Look at what people are doing. They're buying digitally through e-commerce, they're getting delivery at home, they're getting food through e-commerce, entertainment to Netflix or Hotstar or whatever it is, they're getting education. There's so many of you are on Zoom listening to this podcast. I don't know if the working day you'll be able to listen. So people's need to commute may come down. People may well ask, why should I commute to office? Why should I go in the traffic and spend 4 hours a day? Why should I have that kind of a stress? And Harish Bhai was telling me the number of deaths in Mumbai in the last 1 month has come down because we have 160,000 people dying of accidents is in India. And I think there are no traffic, so there are no accidents. 10 to 12 people used to die every day in the railway system. There are no rails going, I guess. So there's nobody dying. So deaths have come down. People are more healthy. And I think hospitals are going empty. They're only at 25, 30%. So we're going to see a permanent change in behavior. And what does it mean? It means that digitally, we will be there in 3 years, what would have taken 7, 8 years. And we've seen how Reliance Jio is tied up with Facebook to come and use WhatsApp and create the Jio Mart. So we're going to have a fight for survival, fight for domination between Reliance Jio and Reliance Jio and Walmart and Amazon and others too. And this is going to be a very big fight for domination. We got to see what happens. All three are well capitalized, and the Reliance Jio strategy is fantastic. They want to get about maybe 2.5, 3 crore Kirana stores on the platform, and they come to the platform, they want to connect to consumers. But the big thing is, if they come on the platform and consolidate the supply to this, they can go to Hindustan Lever and say, I got 1 million items, now give me a 10% discount. So we could see lesser prices and lower inflation in all the commodities that we consume because there's going to be consolidation. So we're going to see that happen remarkably. Will restaurants still be there? Well, people may not go to restaurants so often. They enjoy home food. They still want to go out, but we don't know because people may not want to travel for fear of social distancing. Are they going to fly so much? I think flights will come down. It was booming earlier, but now it's going to come down. Are they going to go international? That is also doubtful. Tourism, they may travel by car. Will they travel by air? Maybe. So I think the big issue is all our habits are going to change. A behavioral outcome is there in a very big way, and that behavioral outcome will have repercussions on business models. So what should we do as a business? How should we do? How should we reach out to consumers? And our consumer, what will happen to education? Will there be exams for class 12? Will they be able to join the IITs or go to college? Will people who graduates be able to go to the master's program? Will students be able to go international to join America somewhere where all the universities are shut? So we don't know. But the key thing is certain. Business will not be the same as usual. And business will change because human beings' habits have changed. And these habits will lead right to new industries. And all industries have to adopt digital. We have seen great tools. We've seen frameworks come which enable improvement in productivity. Now, TCS has said only 25% of people will come to office. It will have repercussions on real estate. But even Infi has got 93% of people working from home. So work from home will become the new norm. But I do believe that 25, 30, 40% of people will be permanently rotated to work from home, but people will still come to office. That means traffic may come down. People may not have to go long distances. The gig economy may take off. And it means employment will be very, very different. and the gig economy takes off, contractual employment for the middle class comes up, how are they going to react? What are they going to do? Is something that we have to think deeply. The last point I'll make about India is that India has to look at the globe as a marketplace. With the global supply chain changing, this India's opportunity. I'm on the board of Havels. Havels set up a AC plant near Delhi, and it is fully robotic, fully automated, and they produce ACs at a cost equal to China. So you cannot say the Chinese price is going to be the big price, because in India, with automated manufacturing, with robotics and people having the capital, lower cost of capital, and people want to shift away, there could be a big boost for manufacturing in India. But all manufacturers, everybody else, to look at the global market, to see how do you tackle the global market. You know, Harish and all of us worked in Indian IT services. We succeeded because we decided we want to tackle a $1 trillion global market and not a $1 billion Indian market. So today we have $150 billion of software exports, and we are prospering, we got cash, etc. So I think work habits will change, global trade will change. Now, what about startups? Now, I think for startups, I think we have to change the mindset. India will have to change the mindset to make sure startups build robust business model, they engage with people, and they are able to work and create sustainable business model. I will answer that in Q&A. The last point I want to say is, what about economic stimulus? Now, I've been writing on the economic stimulus and suggesting to government what has to do. At this point of time, the first thing we need to do is take care of 60% of population, the bottom of the pyramid. Government has given a 1.7 lakh crore stimulus. It has to be expanded, I think, till about June, July, and maybe September. People have to get the money because they have to be comfortable. Everybody should get food. And all of us who are in this 40% should work to make sure the people in the 60% are comfortable, because we're all in this together. We are part of India, and we have to be together in the future too. And we can't let any Indian starve or any Indian go hungry to bed. So that has been done. Now we need a stimulus for many things. MSMEs and others need stimulus for credit. RBI is opened up, but RBI has created 7 lakh crores of liquidity, but all the 7 lakh crores, instead of being lent, is with the reverse repo with RBI. So it's come back to RBI as a deposit at maybe 3.5% interest. So now we need a credit guarantee fund of at least 50,000 crores from the government, which will guarantee first 10% lending, so banks can lend easier to MSMEs, etc. So MSMEs and most industries have a liquidity problem, not a solvency problem. What does it mean? It means that you can't collect your receivables, you can't make your payables, the system is frozen. There is no money in circulation. So circulation is not there. How will you get money to make payroll? So people are wondering, how will they make the payroll for April? Because with no money in circulation, no credit available, because borrowing is not increasing, we do have a deep challenge. So I think we need to have a credit guarantee fund. Next, we need a fund for the affected industries like aviation, airports, hospitality, restaurants, etc. I think government is working on a very big package. And then we need a big boost to infrastructure. We need more spending on roads, more spending on the railways to create better supply chain. We need more spending on airports. We need more spending on the ports, etc. Because this is the time India has to spend massively on infrastructure, which is mostly government driven. And being government driven, they will have backward linkages. If the roads are built, cement will be consumed, steel will be consumed. If the railways are going to expand, then steel will be consumed. There'll be huge amount of work given, contractors will improve, etc. The real estate sector should get a boost, because real estate of agriculture is the largest employer. So I think for real estate, there has to be loan restructuring. They have to take a hit, and they possibly have to sell off the stock at 15-20% discount. And with lower housing loans, things could improve. So I think we need a large stimulus with infrastructure, and the stimulus has to be possibly 5 to 6 lakh crores, and maybe 10 lakh crores. Now, where will the money come from? I think India has to open up its financial markets. India has to make sure that it goes outside and borrows. Already the Indian government has made sure that certain government bonds can be invested in 100% by foreign investors. So I think India has to open up further, ask its parastatals, if it doesn't want to make sovereign issues like parastatals like the National Highway Authority of India, Rural Electrification, Power Finance Corporation, etc., to go borrow 20, 30-year loans. Maybe go to Japan and get the money in. Once the money comes in, there'll be liquidity. Fiscal deficit will go up. But with low inflation, low consumer demand, I don't think it'll have an impact on inflation. But the key thing is government should make this large economic stimulus to invest this year. So next year will be better. This year we could be negative growth or no growth, but the next year has to be a good year. And for all of us in this podcast and all of us who are watching and all of us in industry, we have to make this moves. We have to be in survival mode, cut costs deeply, relook at our economic models, relook at our business models, relook at where we spend to get consumers, keep our people together and keep the motivation high, keep talking to them and communicate and redo our operations, redo our processes to make customer acquisition easier, focus on the customer, and when things open up slowly, it will happen. When will things open up? I do believe that possibly by June, maybe 20-25% of India will be open. By July, another 25%. And by September, we could be at 60-65%. Will 100% be open? We don't know. But if 60-65% opens, it gives the government the confidence to open up much further. So I will end by saying the world has changed. Everything that we did earlier is being impacted. The global supply chain has changed. The global financial markets will see a lot of liquidity, low interest rate. Globalization could be in retreat. People may put up walls all around. India needs new allies like Japan to come together. And as far as India is concerned, this year will be a bad year for us. We have to accept that. And we have to invest for the next year. We have to have a large-scale stimulus for industry. Hopefully, government will do it. There'll be high unemployment. So government has to take care and invest in infrastructure. We could have negative inflation this year. There's a dramatic change in habits. All business models will change. And we have to look at the globe as a marketplace. And we have to use technology deeply because technology has matured where we all feel productivity increases. So Harish Bhai, I'll stop here and take questions which you have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So you talked about business model changes and what stimulus to be given and so forth. But India has a very fundamental problem of labor reforms are not there, land reforms, judiciary reforms, electoral reforms. Today, the country is together. First time you are seeing 1.3 billion people following social distancing. You can see the government machinery, which we normally criticize, doing an outstanding job. The healthcare is doing an outstanding job. So why not we use this opportunity to bring in reforms all across the board?
Harish Bhai, I totally agree with you. And in Prime Minister Modi, we have a very strong leader who's a patriot, who's a nationalist, and who could take the hard decisions. He has the popular support of the Indian people. And I think he has been advised by his advisors as what kind of reforms are to be taken. He's already worked in the labor reforms by the consolidation of all 44 acts into 4 courts. I think 2 have been passed, 2 more will have to be done. And I think there have been much reforms in the financial markets, in RBI, in other areas. And I hope we'll see drastic reforms in many other areas. But Harish Bhai, the important thing for us to understand is what Prime Minister Modi does in Delhi will have little impact on the ground. We made a study of the Indian states. You'll be very surprised to know that 5 states, Telangana, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Gujarat, and Tamil Nadu have a per capita income of 250,000 rupees per person, 250,000 per person. And they have about 35 crore people. Then 5 other states, Bihar with a per capita of 48,000, UP with a per capita of 46,000, then West Bengal with 134,000, with Rajasthan with 130,000, and Madhya Pradesh with 112,000, have 65 crore people. And their per capita income is only around 95,000 rupees, where India's per capita income is 149,000. So whatever Prime Minister Modi does, the impact on the ground will be less. So this is the time, Harish Bhai, when every chief minister has to look at his own state, has to open up, create conditions for people to prosper, remove unnecessary regulations, and create the incentive for industries to come. Now, a Bihar cannot do what Maharashtra, Karnataka can do. A Rajasthan cannot do what a Gujarat can do. So I think it's very, very important, the keen kind of diversity, all the states should get together. And it means, Harish Bhai, you people in Bombay have to work to liberalize Bombay, liberalize the financial markets, liberalize the content market, and invest more in startups, invest more in technology, create high quality jobs, and help manufacturing. So you got to write a vision report for your chief minister, like we wrote the report, Maharashtra creating a $1 trillion economy by 2025, and lobby with them to open up Maharashtra. If all of us in various states talk to our chief ministers and do that, I think India will be a dramatically changed country. I think that is the key. We can't look for diktats from Delhi because there's no impact. They will open up everything. but in every state, somebody will come in the way. So I think we have to be working with the states. And I'm very confident that will happen because the states have realized their vulnerability. For example, Yogi Adityanath has called all these people and said, I want the Japanese industry, which is shifting from Japan to come to UP. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? We have not seen it happen in Tamil Nadu, but he has done it. But look at the vision of that man. That man's vision, what he wants to do it. So Chief Minister should compete.
No question. I mean, I'm hoping that with the impact of the coronavirus, all politicians also have come down to earth and they realize that they can't just live in their own small world and open up the economy for the benefit of the masses. Now, if you look at the people, for example, I mean, like the judiciary. Now, unless the judiciary is strong, how do you expect innovation-driven entrepreneurship to flourish? Okay, every innovator.
I agree with you that
virtual judiciary can help. Yeah.
The judiciary has not been delivering justice within the time that you want. But Harish Bhai, there are three challenges to the judiciary. The first is we don't have enough judicial capacity. We have 18 judges per million people. America has got 100, we need 50. So we have to massively expand. Two, we have to use more technology with the trying to do now. And hopefully with the change of habit, getting in video conferencing, we are seeing that impact and hopefully they will change. And that is important. And the third thing is government is the biggest litigator. Yes. Governments must remove all these cases, many of the frivolous cases, and make sure they don't file the cases. A massive reform is required. I hope the government is listening. I hope Prime Minister Modi has done that. I will look at this because this is an area, like you said, of the biggest need for us. Because if you don't get justice in 3 years, the Supreme Court, other courts give a stay on everything, stay on infrastructure, don't open up and wait for 3 or 4 years. It's going to be terrible. Look at Fortis. Fortis has kept money in escrow. For the last 1 year, the payment has not been given. So what happens to Fortis? What happens to foreign investment? Look at tax terrorism. For the last 5 years, the taxes in dispute has gone up from 4 lakh crores, 4,25,000 crores to 9 lakh crores. And many of the cases are stuck in the High Court, stuck in the Supreme Court. I agree with you. Judicial reform should be top of the line for the kind of reform. And all of us as citizens should write to Prime Minister Modi and suggest how it can be done. I'm sure he knows about it, but we should try to put in our views.
Another area of reform I would suggest would be education. Why can't IITs have 100,000 students online now and impart that level of education?
You know, Harish Bhai, I was in a committee with Dr. Anil Kakodkar. It's called the Kakodkar Committee, where we said we need 100 high-quality engineering institutes like the IIT, which will have 100,000 students every year, the same quality. Just imagine, 100 high-quality, public and private. We may be having 70, 80, and they graduate 100,000 engineers every year. Will be a superpower in 4 or 5 years in engineering. Yeah. So I think we need that kind of capacity to be built up. It has to be done online, offline. So it doesn't have to be offline. It can be done online, offline, because they have the content, they have the ability, they have everything else. So I think the capacity in the IIT should double, and they should run in shifts for the next 4 or 5 years. You know, interesting thing is happening in medicine. I think today the capacity in the medical school has gone up to 80,000. That's the latest report that I read. And for MD, it's gone up to 36,000. Last year, India graduated 55,000 doctors. Very soon, possibly by 2025 or 2030, we'll be graduating 1 lakh doctors a year. So we have to build up huge human capital, quality human capital all over. I think this will be the turning point because AICT, UGC are all talking about offline, online education, and all students now, many of them, most of them have got a cell phone or have got a smartphone. The parents will invest for them. The costs have come down. They're learning how to do online, offline education. There's extraordinary amount of content available. So we have to change radically. I hope that reforms come, and it will come because young people, children's habit has changed.
Okay, there's a question from Keshav Murugesh, former chairman of NASSCOM, WNS CEO. He suggests, okay, why not we open up FDI for a period of 6 months, get $1 trillion in, but the clearance should be done in 7 days, appoint 3 high-level secretaries, and within 7 days they should give the clearance. Do you think such ideas? No. Go ahead.
I totally agree with you. I think we should have open FDI and we should have a faster process, and I think it can happen. But we must remember that most things are open to 100% investment right now. India does not have so many FDI restrictions earlier, but the process of getting this FDI approval from RBI, approval for setting up a factory, approval, that is the problem. I think that has to be liberalized. That's why, Harish Bhai, we should have a think tank which will look into all these processes and write to government how to cut. My friend Manish Sabarwal made a study of all the labor legislation. He said there are 50,000 compliances for labor. For every company, 50,000. Even we don't know about it. And 10,000 of the compliances have a criminal punishment. Can you believe that? Criminal punishment for 10,000. So what President Trump has done is cut away 30% of regulations from what were existing 3.5 years ago. 30%. And American industry is saying, we are liberated, we are done well. So Prime Minister Modi should use the opportunity to cut unnecessary regulations. But for that, all of us have to work together to send to them, these are unnecessary, please cut this out. For example, RBI, the number of forms that you have to fill for getting foreign capital is enormous. And that's why, and they don't reply. They don't give approval. There is no time limit. So we should write to RBI. So a lot of work has to be done.
Okay, here is the question from now. Let's come to the startup world. You have invested in so many companies. What is your experience right now? How these startups are faring? Are there any success stories of grit or the strength, how they've reacted well to the COVID-19? And what do you see as a scenario for them for the next 6 months? Yes, survival is what you say. But beyond that, what are the guidance that you would like to give to the startup entrepreneurs?
Harish Bhai, we have a portfolio of about 250 companies among the 14 funds. I must say, I'm very impressed with what they have done. All the founders have come together and said, we have to conserve cash. So how do you conserve cash? They cut unnecessary costs, unnecessary in the circumstances. They cut the pay for everybody. They made deep cuts in what they were getting. They communicated to all of them, made them work online and at home. And then they relooked at all the processes and they relooked at the technology, reconfigured the technology, and they're coming out with new business models. And the new business models are very different based upon better technology, better customer acquisition, and making sure they have the cash for the next 6 to 8 months. And two, they're talking to all their investors to support them and to make sure that they are viable, and the investors are looking at them in a very different manner. Of course, about maybe 10-15% of them will not rise when this ends because they don't have enough cash, the business model does not work, etc. So we must accept mortality across the 45,000 companies, or maybe 20-25% will be gone because they don't have viable business model, they don't have the money. I don't think the investors will back them because most investors are saying, I got this amount of cash, I'm going to back the winners. I'm going to take a hit, I'm going to do this. So my view is the founders of all startups should look at the business model, should relook at the technology, relook at the processes, relook at the people, and change the business model, make it sharper, focus more, and improve the technology and customer acquisition, and rebuild relationships with the investors in a very big way and market. Because today, capital is going to be scarce. We're not going to see this very, very high valuation because people understand that, you don't want to throw money down a deep pit. So you're going to be conservative, even though you may have capital, and they're going to pick the winners. So we're going to see a separation of the big boys and the small boys, and that is going to accelerate. So you all got to make sure you're among the big boys. You got to reach out to angels. You got to reach out. So investor relations, something we used to do, Harish Pai, is become very, very important. Because remember, it's the investor who writes the check. So you better be good to him.
Okay, but what about startups, for example? Are you as bullish as you were before in terms of what they will deliver or transform India over the next 10 years?
Harish Bhai, I am bullish because there is nothing that has caused us to be less bullish. For a very important reason. We are estimating it will take 5 years. It will take 5 years for things to change as far as the digital world is concerned, and we're seeing the change happen in 45 days. Will the change sustain? A large part of it will sustain. So digitization has improved, and we are seeing an increase in people taking to technology, and we are seeing an increase in B2B business because all business saying we got to redo our processes, we got to have people working from home, we got to do this, and we got to spend. So spending on technology will accelerate because technology will improve productivity, will bring down costs. But the key thing is you should be able to sell. They're going to demand lower prices, and you got to be careful how you do it, and it's got to be simple to hook on. So you got to create your apps and your APIs so that people can link up immediately and make it simple, make it intuitive, So the GUI has to change. So the way you get on people on board has to change because the old methods will not work. Today we have almost unlimited bandwidth. So I think these are the things that has to be done. So I think technology is going to be a winner. So we are very strong supporters of startups, but the key thing is we got to evaluate who are going to be the winners. Because when you have limited capital,
Mohandas,
yeah.
If the technology is the key enabler for the next 5 years to transform India, if you look at the 2 packages announced by the finance minister, and you look at the RBI's 2 major announcements, the word technology or the word startup didn't exist.
I agree with you.
Their mindset, startups or the technology world will play transforming India. Is just they're a lot more worried about the traditional way of thinking rather than the new way of thinking. Do you agree, or what's your view?
No, I see. Well, let us say the technology startups world, they created a document, they asked the government for many things, and it's been disappointing that we had a meeting with Piyush Goyal. Piyush was receptive, but the government has not done anything. But what I'm told is the government's first priority is the bottom of the pyramid. The 60% of people who are there at the bottom and who have to be taken care of. And I think that is a big issue. And the next priority will be to revive all industries which have a large number of labor because jobs have to be done. So I think they will come to startups and the tech sector sometime later. I'm still hopeful because the government knows that digital transformation will only happen through this. So I think we have to wait a little bit before it happens.
Now, so there are some other questions from Ganesh Natarajan and others about how would the MSME survive?
Harish Bhai, MSMEs are having difficulty because of lack of liquidity. You see, all of them are working on cash flows because they get money, they pay yesterday's liability, right? They don't have enough cash, they're inadequately capitalized. And now cash flows are stopped, nobody's paying them. And most large companies, surprisingly, and I'm very upset, are not paying the small guys. They're saying, calling up all the small guys and saying, I'm not going to pay you, I'm going to pay you later. The big companies should borrow and pay the small guys. You can't use the credit of smaller creators and then say, I got negative working capital. It's stupid because you are paying the cost of capital of all these small guys. You owe it to all your small suppliers to pay on time and pay ahead of time so that they have the liquidity because you got access to capital. So I think they're in deep trouble, and that's why RBI has been trying to pump in liquidity so they have access to credit. But the banks, as usual, are not lending because they're all scared. Tomorrow they turn out to be NPAs. They're all going to be hauled up. That's why we need the government to step in and create a credit guarantee fund. The government steps in and says, I'm going to create a 50,000 credit guarantee fund, and then says that I'll guarantee the first 10% loss. Why don't you go lend? We could have 5 lakhs, 10 lakh crores as being lent by the banks, and that could boost all this. And we also told the government, pay back all the income tax refunds, pay back all your GST refunds, pay money to the state for the 14% due on the GST. And 2, pay all the contractors 60,000 crores that is owed by NHAI. Pay the contractors from the railways. Pay for all government services for healthcare. Because Mint produced a report some time back which said government owed 5 lakh crores. I don't know if the figure is right. At least we know 2.5, 3 lakh crores is due. Now the income tax refund is given up to 5 lakhs. Why can't you give all the income tax refunds? Because people are paid money. Government pays 6% or so on the interest, and we have to pay 18%. It's absurd. At this time of crisis, they must give back all the refunds due, not keep the people's money, at least their money. That will kickstart. I think government needs to do a lot more. We're waiting for the second stimulus. I hear that is getting prepared. Hopefully, we should see it soon.
I think from what you are saying, our recommendation to the government would be, hey, you should join the government and help the finance minister come up with the right incentives for the industry.
No, Harish Bhai, I see the government knows all this. They have received all this. It's gone right up to Prime Minister Modi. I'm sure Prime Minister Modi is well versed. He reads the newspapers. He knows all this. I guess they're just crafting it. I spoke to somebody there and they said that, look, we're not going to have a big bang announcement. We're going to wait and watch, and we are going to do it in a staggered manner. But the problem is we need hope. MSMEs need hope.
Exactly.
Something will happen. The hope goes away. Then they lay off people. And once you lay off people, getting them back is difficult. So once something is broken, then you can't patch it together. So first, prevent it being broken. That is the issue. So we're telling the government, look, we need hope. Give hope. Tell me we're going to do this. Start it off. Expand it. For example, RBI did something, release liquidity, then they expanded it. Say that we're going to have a credit guarantee fund for 2 lakh crores, do it. And then after 1 month, expand to 5 lakh crores. So we need hope. We want an announcement. So everybody's eagerly waiting for Prime Minister Modi and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to do something. let us keep, well, we got to tell them that, look, please give us hope.
So what's your opinion on Jahan versus Jahan, or life versus livelihood?
I think both are important.
Yeah.
Both are important. Right now, Jahan is important, but Jahan becomes important in the next month, because when you start thinking of opening up economic activity, because 2 months lockdown, India can't afford. How big is 2 months lockdown? $500 billion. Our monthly GDP is $250 billion. $500 billion hit, if you take on a GDP of 3 trillion, that's a very large hit. We're not a rich country. So, we have a deep challenge. People have to go back. And unless we allow people to go back and start business, how do you know whether it will work or not? How do you know what we need to do? We can't live in fear all the time. So I think today, the meeting of the Prime Minister with the Chief Ministers is very, very important. I hear they're going to discuss ways of doing it. And some of the Chief Ministers have to be bold and take decisions and say, Jahan is important, but Jahan is also important. We looked after Jahan for some time. Now we look after the other part. We want livelihoods to come back.
Thank you. Atul, do you have a question coming up? Atul, Nishar?
Yeah. So, Mohan, since China is not being trusted anymore by the world, is India likely to become the supply chain hub for the world?
Atul, to be frank, no. Because look, to be the supply chain hub for the world, we need a lot of people to market to the MNCs and talk to them. Who is marketing for India? It cannot be done by DPIIT. It has to be done by CII. It has to be done by industry, which will go around and talk and make sure that they tie up. Two, we have to decide we are going to become a contract manufacturer also, because many of them have brands. They may not want to invest. We got to tell them, we will manufacture for you in India. We'll set up a fully automated plant. Come and let's join, and you can use it as a source, like the electronic industry did for Apple, etc. Because those brands are difficult to build. So we have to do that. I think the burden of this is on Indian industry. Indian industry and the government should work together. Remember, for NASSCOM, who bought the business to India? It's all of us. We went, we marketed and bought the business. Government put in policy. Government helped out. Government didn't go and market to get the business in. So I think CII, FICCI should go together and look at all this and then commit and then work with government to get it in. I mean, government, who in the government will go and market? Please tell me. Who are the people to market? There is Invest India, but what will they market? They say, come to India. Okay, I'll make some policy. I'll give the approval. But they have to come to a state. If the state government is not responsive, what will happen? That's why we need Indian industry to take the lead. Why can't a Mahindra go and become a big manufacturer of automobiles? Why can't the Tatas look at revising the model for automobile manufacturing? Why can't it become the cement exporter of the world? We have 500 million capacity, 385 million. We have to cut prices, work at lesser margin, but we can look at global supply. So I think the mindset of the Indian entrepreneur has to change. Because, Atul will be very surprised. At one point of time, India had 21% return on the top 50 companies, extraordinarily high. So everybody is looking for profit. FMCG, the leader of FMCG has an operating margin of 22-23%. The leading auto manufacturer in India had an operating margin of 18%. After royalty, now I think it's come to 13%. That's absolutely high. Ford Motors only had 9% at the best year that they've ever had. So I think our manufacturers have been looking for higher profits. They must go compete on price, quality, become a much, much bigger thing. And once they do that, I mean, they will do very well, because India is a great market. It is a growing market. You can use the Indian market to offset some of your costs, have economies of scale, and then start exporting.
Mohan, there's a question from Dhanpal Javeri. What would be the dream team of the finance ministry to execute the post-crisis plan?
See, I would say what the finance ministry requires is 5 to 6 people from outside the government to act as a brain trust. 5 to 6 people, not 10, 20 people, 5 to 6 people to work as a brain trust, who understand the economy, work with them, and they should listen to the brain trust, and a meeting with the Prime Minister once a fortnight to give all these big ideas. I don't think government lacks ideas. I don't think so, because they all read the newspapers, we all write, they listen to everybody, they know everything, they know mostly. But why are they not doing it? They're not doing it, I believe, because the political leaders are not taking decisions. Harish, you can't expect a bureaucrat to be an innovator. A bureaucrat is not an innovator. It's the status quo. The political leaders have to break the chain. Jahan Sinha brought in a new policy for creating the airline industry and the airport industry. So we got huge airports. Udan is there. They're flying all over the place. So we need a political leaders to be bold, to have a brain trust, and then to push. And I'm sure it will work. So I think that is the key. We need more international political leaders. They have to be better. There are 4 or 5 good political leaders. They have to be bolder, think bigger, and act, because it is their time, and not keep on listening to the bureaucrats. If you ask the bureaucrat's opinion, he'll play safe. What is in it for him? He's not going to take a risk.
Thank you. I think we have just 2 minutes left now. So, Mohan, would you like to have any last comments?
Yeah. Folks, all I want to say is the world has changed. We must be prepared for the new world. This is going to be the digital world. This is going to be the world based on new forms of behavior by individuals. And India has a great opportunity in this world, because the old world order is breaking down. Global supply chains are breaking down. India has a manufacturing capacity of 250 million in mobile. We can expand electronics. India is a pharma exporter. India is a tech exporter. India is the second largest in steel, the second largest in cement. In most commodities, most areas, we have a large workforce. We have a large industry. But what we must do is think big. We must access capital from all around the world, get in the world's capital at lower rates, and build bigger plants and manufacture and sell and show services, expand globally, take more risk. So I think the entrepreneurs of India, the startups of India, the business people for India should now start looking at the global world as a market and access global capital. If they do well, the next 5 years can be India's year in the globe, when we have a great opportunity.
Thank you. I think I printed some of the questions I had on WhatsApp and whatnot. I've not even finished half of that. So we will need one more session with you later on.
Sure.
Thank you, Mohan.
It's great.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Well, it was wonderful.
Thank you. Great talking to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for joining us, Harish Pai, Mohandas Pai, and Atul Bhai. And thanks everyone for making it today. Rest assured, we will definitely come back with one more session with Mr. Pai very soon. Thank you all. Everybody stay safe and watch out for more sessions coming from Time Mumbai. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.